Assalamualaikum, Assalamualaikum, and welcome to the Hawazin Islamic Study Circle HISC Seerah session 206, inshallah. And we're into our 16th year of doing the study circle here in Hawazin. And obviously for the last few years we've been online, partly because of moving to Pakistan and obviously COVID, but inshallah we've managed to carry on. And so we're coming towards the end of the seerah, and then we'll talk about other things possibly that we can do after that, inshallah. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who's been part of this journey, alhamdulillah. Last session, 205, what we did was the first year of delegations. We did some older delegations that sort of predate the 9th year Hijri. So we talked about Abdul Qais from Bahrain. He first arrived 5th year after Hijrah, and everyone in his tribe was rushing towards meeting the Prophet ﷺ, but he took his time, made himself presentable, put on some perfume, cleaned himself before he met the Prophet ﷺ, and that was a characteristic the Prophet ﷺ praised in him. The Prophet ﷺ went on to explain to the tribe what Islam and Iman was. And then we did a really great story about Tufail ibn Amr Dosi from the tribe of Dos, who with the tribe arrived at the time of Khaybar, but he had met the Prophet ﷺ before, and essentially the Quraysh had been putting propaganda into him to prevent him, because he was eloquent and learned, from listening to the Prophet ﷺ in the Qur'an. So he would put cotton in his ears, but then he accidentally overheard the Prophet ﷺ. So he was quite inquisitive as to what this is about. And then eventually he became a Muslim, and so he didn't listen to the propaganda. He made up his own mind, which is really important. And we still have people around us who act like the Quraysh and try to control the information, the propaganda that is out there in the community. But he brought his tribe from Yemen, and they all converted after Khaybar. And then we also talked about the delegation from Bani Amr bin Sa'sa, including their very corrupt leader Amr ibn Tufail and Arbad bin Qais, and these. This tribe was the tribe that was responsible for the massacre at the Ma'una well, but they tried to again assassinate the Prophet with a poisoned dagger. Didn't work, and then Amr bin Tufail, he essentially got this really rapidly progressing skin disease, and he was lost in the night in the desert. And Arbad, he came back and he said some bad things about the Prophet, about Islam, and about Allah, and then in full view of everyone he was struck by lightning and incinerated, him and his camel, there in broad daylight. So that's what we did. And then we're going to talk about two other important conversions, the second one being Banu Thaqif, people of Taif. Before that, just a quick story from Banu Saad ibn Bakr. Now this is the tribe of Halima, the foster mother of the Prophet ﷺ. And we talked about how the Prophet ﷺ's sister came to the Prophet ﷺ after the Battle of Hunain and said, I'm the sister of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ says, what are you talking about? Because the Sahabi were really perplexed. And then she goes, you bit me on the back, and I've still got the scar to prove it in the process of last. So this is that tribe, Banu Saad ibn Bakr. And like we mentioned many years ago when we started the seerah, what would happen is that the noblemen in the Quraysh in Mecca, they thought that the city of Mecca was quite polluted and it was very urbanized, lots of people coming and going. So when a child is born, they would prefer to send it to the sort of pure, arena of the desert, and then you'd get different Bedouin tribes coming. And Banu Saad ibn Bakr was one of those tribes, Bedouin tribes, who would come and say, we will nurse any newborns for a period of time, so they sort of build up their strength and character and immunity and whatever else. And then obviously, because the Prophet was an orphan, he didn't get, he was the last one to get a foster mother. So this is the same tribe, and as a wider tribe, They allied themselves with the Quraysh. They were there in the Battle of Ahzab against the Prophet ﷺ. They were there as part of the Battle of the Hunain. They sent one of their chiefs, Dimam ibn Thalaba, to come and negotiate with the Prophet ﷺ. So he is this broad, charismatic character, and he has two braids, ponytails, you could say, and which wasn't unusual for the Bedouin, especially in that time. And sort of, there's a lot of theatre involved as he comes in. So you had the people of Thaqif, who were residents in Taif, and we'll deal with them next. And then you have the Hawazin, who lived around Taif, the Bedouins, and he's one of the tribal leaders. So he comes in, he ties up his cowl outside the Prophet's mosque, and he storms in a very abrupt way, saying, "Where is the son of Abdul Muttalib?" And again, everybody knows who Abdul Muttalib is. He was there with Abraha and Zamzam, etc. So very prestigious and noble lineage. So he's demanding, where is the son of Abdul Muttalib? And the Prophet says, I am the son of Abdul Muttalib. And so the Imam, he comes to the Prophet and sort of in a very forthright way, and he goes, are you Muhammad? And again, etiquette was for the Muslims wouldn't call the Prophet, wouldn't call him Muhammad. They would call him, Ya Rasulullah, etc., etc. So he goes, are you Muhammad? And he goes, yes, I am Muhammad. And he goes, I will ask you, and I'll be very, coarse or rough with you, so don't get angry with me. And the Prophet says, okay, fine, ask as you wish. So the Imam says, look, you sent an envoy to us, and he told us that Allah sent you. And again, it's important to realize the Prophet, he's involved in the dawah, he's proactive, he's sending out emissaries, he's sending out people to teach Islam, invite people to Islam. And he goes, your envoy's come to us and he's told us Allah has sent you. And the Prophet says, yes, he has spoken the truth. And he goes, well, so the Imam goes, so who created the heavens, the skies and the earth? And the Prophet says, Allah. And then the Imam says, so I ask you by the one who created the heavens, the skies, the earth, I ask you by Allah, are you swearing by Allah that he sent you? And the Prophet goes, I swear by Allah that I have been sent by him. So, and then he goes, okay, fine. So your envoy has said that we have to pray 5 times a day. So I ask you by the one who sent you, did Allah command us to pray 5 times a day? Prophet says, yes. And then he goes, did he ask? And then he goes, through all of them. Goes, do we have to pay zakah? Yes. Do we have to fast during the month of Ramadan? Yes. Do we have to perform Hajj once in our life? Yes. So again, the Prophet, he's going through this, and the Imam, he's going through all this issue to reinforce this, and just also essentially get it straight from the head honcho. This is the deal, so he can go back and negotiate and tell his tribe as it is, as we'll see. Then he goes to the Prophet, do I have to pray anything more than the 5 fard prayers? And the Prophet says, no, not unless you want to. And then he goes, do I have to give 1 penny or dinar more in zakah? And the Prophet says, no. Do I have to fast 1 day outside of Ramadan? Again, the Prophet says, no. And the Prophet says, no, not unless you want to, not unless you want to. So when he's finished all his sort of little say-so, he goes, I swear by the one who has sent you that I shall follow this, and I will not increase it nor decrease it 1 bit. And then he walks out in a gusto. And then the Prophet turned around to the Sahabi and said, if he is true to what he has said, then he shall enter Jannah. So essentially, again, really important point for us, you do these fundamentals of, you have to believe, obviously, the Aqidah, then you do these fundamentals, the pillars, the faraid, obviously avoid the major sins. You do that, and Jannah is promised for you. And he was a very blessed person, the Imam. So when he returned back, you can tell by his sort of charisma, it said that on the same day he got back, everyone in his tribe became a Muslim. they turned to Islam. And then he had all the idols destroyed on that same first day. And they're saying that there's no other delegate that had the impact on his tribe in the barakah that Dimam had with his tribe. So that's a small story. Now, inshallah, a slightly more involved one about Banu Thaqif, the tribe of Thaqif and those around Taif. Now, they came obviously in the 9th year of the Hijrah, but this is preluded by another short story, and this involves Urwah ibn Masud Ath-Thaqafi, right, of the tribe of Thaqif. He actually became a Muslim after the Battle of Hunain. But Urwah, we've talked about him before in the Seerah. You know, he's popped up at a few critical points, but he is a well-respected member of the tribe of Thaqif of Taif. He is one of the main chiefs. Carries a lot of weight. He's been to the palaces of Heraclius, of the Persian Empire, of Abyssinia. You know, he is one of the par excellence leaders. So, and in fact, he's referred indirectly in the Qur'an because it was said that people used to complain when the Prophet ﷺ received the revelation. They said, how can an orphan, and we did this many years ago, how can an orphan receive the revelation from Allah? Surely it is better if it goes to one of the two great men of the two great cities. So this is quoting al-Walid al-Mughira, and al-Walid ibn Mughira. He is the father of Khalid bin Walid. So al-Walid was seen as one of the top chiefs of the Quraysh, and certainly, you know, he was the most eloquent in Arabic, and he was their greatest sage, as it were. So there was al-Walid, and then there's Urwah ibn Masud. And then, you know, Allah responds to that. Are they the ones, you know, people who say this, to decide where Allah's mercy goes down? So Allah said, yes, that's none of your business. You know, he decides, obviously, for his reasons, who gets the revelation. But again, there's an indirect reference to Urwah. That's what the people were saying. And in terms of his physique, there's another famous hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he's explaining how the Sahabi, how some of the prophets, the great prophets, looked, and they said Abu and Musa alayhi salam, he is like a person from such a tribe, and I saw Isa, and he resembles most Urwah ibn Masud, and I saw Ibrahim, and he resembles your companion the most, as in the Prophet ﷺ, in physical appearance. And we know that Isa alayhi salam, he had a very fair complexion and broad shoulders, and it said that his hair was as if he'd come out of a shower. It was glistening like pearl, you know, dark black, but glistening like pearls are dripping off. So that's again the Prophet making reference to Urwah ibn Masud. Then also it's the other time we've come across him is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Now, at the time, Urwah was in Makkah doing his own business and doing his own Umrah, and Prophet, he's coming from Medina to do Umrah. And obviously, we talked about how the Quraysh were panicking and they didn't want him to enter that year, and then try to block his path, and then the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. But in amongst that melee, Urwah, he goes to the Quraysh and says, let me negotiate, right? Don't you trust me? Aren't I a son for you? Haven't I done such and such and such and such and such and such? Despite being from the rival city, Taif, he obviously carried a lot of weight. Then he said, look, let me go and try to reconcile between you guys. He just saw this as an internal squabble between the Quraysh and one of their own. And so Safwan ibn Umayyah and Abu Sufyan from the Quraysh, they said, okay, fine, we will let you represent us. So he went representing the Quraysh, Urwah ibn Masud, to negotiate at Hudaybiyah. And basically, so he's got his Jahiliyyah concepts with him, and he looks around at the Ansar and at the small number of Muhajir, and he goes, and he's not impressed. So he goes to the Prophet and says, look, you've got two choices. Either you win and you kill them all, the Quraysh, and I don't know of anyone who has destroyed his own people. Again, very tribal mentality. Or they come and they fight you, and I can't see anyone here who can put up a fight. So he obviously doesn't know who the Aus and the Khazraj are. They don't have the pedigree of some of the others. So he says, look, this is madness. And then at him saying that, there's that very famous crude response that Abu Bakr gave, really vulgar response to Urwah, which I won't repeat here. It is in the original one when we talked about Hudaybiyah, and it was to do with what one of the goddesses. And Urwah was so shocked by that, he said, look, I respect you, Abu Bakr. I owe you some money, but because of the insult you've given me, the verbal insult, we're quits now. I don't owe you anything. And then he's talking to the Prophet ﷺ, trying to talk some sense as he sees it in him. And as we said before, one of the cultural things that is accepted is that you touch each other's beards, or you stroke each other's beards. And as Urwah is leaning over to stroke the Prophet ﷺ's beard, Mughira ibn Shuba, who comes on later in the story, he grabs the butt of his sword and he knocks away Urwah's hand, and then Urwah tries to do it again, and he knocks him away and says, next time your hand won't come back to you. And then Urwah, knowing who he is, he doesn't recognize Mughira because he's all clad in his armor, says, he's protecting the Prophet, and he goes, who is this ruffian? What manners has he got? And then the Prophet smiles and says, don't you know, it's your own nephew. And then Mughira's just shocked by that, and and he says, oh, you traitor to Mughira, we're still cleaning ourselves from the problems that you left behind, because what Mughira did, he killed someone, took their money, ran to Medina, and wanted to give some of that money to Medina, became a Muslim. Prophet says, fine, I'll accept your Islam, but I'm not going to take the money. And then when Urwah went back to the Quraysh, knowing that nothing was going to happen with the Prophet ﷺ, he goes back and there's that really famous saying where he said, look, I've visited, this is to the Quraysh, I visited the kings of Caesar, I've been to the palaces of Kisra and Najashi, and I have not seen anyone more respected by his people than the people of Muhammad. By Allah, he never spat, except that they caught it. And now again, he's talking about when the Prophet was doing wudhu. He never did ablution, wash himself, except that they would catch the drops of water dripping off him, and they would rub it on themselves. And they were sitting as if they had birds sitting on their heads, meaning that they'd never look directly at the Prophet ﷺ. They'd never have the gall to look at the Prophet ﷺ in his face, eye to eye. So they're always in a respectful demeanor. And then he goes, whenever he says something, they would race each other to see who is first to fulfill it. So again, he comes back changed, seeing that actually the Muslims are the real deal. And so his advice to the Quraysh is basically accept them, and then they shooed him away. So this is Urwah ibn Masud. So an intelligent man, a sincere man as well. So after the battle of Hunain, Prophet is returning. Urwah comes and he meets the Prophet, chats to him and embraces Islam, becomes a Muslim after the battle of Hunain and the siege of Taif. And then he goes to the Prophet, thanks for let me go back and call them to Islam. I can talk sense into them. And the Prophet says, no, I'm really scared that they might kill you if you go back. And he goes, look, they love me more than their own daughters, which was true in his understanding. And if they found me asleep, they're not even going to bother to wake me up, right? He was their leader. And so, the Prophet was scared for him, but he let him go. And so Urwah, he goes back, and then, they've just had the siege of Taif. They've been at war with the Prophet ﷺ. So Urwah says, look, I have embraced Islam, and I encourage you all to follow me. So then the people, again, we know the visceral hatred towards Islam that they have, and they started, shouting at him and getting really angry and cursing him, and were very, very upset. And then he was quite shocked by their reaction, so he went home and stayed indoors. And then at Fajr time, he gets up, and then he's on his rooftop, and he does the adhan from his rooftop. And it said that when, and this is in the night, obviously, when he reached the adhan, where he's basically where he says Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, an arrow comes from the dark and strikes him, mortally wounding him. And so he's bleeding out. He's about to die. His family are panicking. They come up to him, and they're saying, well, what's happened? And one of the questions is, well, what do we do about revenge? This is the chief. How are we going to sort out who killed him? And what about the blood money? And then he calms them down and says, no, this is a gift from Allah, and he has gifted this to me. Allah has chosen me to become a shaheed, the martyr, and Allah has honored me with that. And you will bury me with the shuhada, the martyrs of Hunain. It's not even in his own family plot, his own sort of area of land. He wants to, as the people of Taif would say, with the traitors of Hunain, the few Muslims that were killed, he wants to be buried in their cemetery. And so that's what happened in the process. And he was sad when he found out, and he said this was a man who was with his people, as was the person of Yasin with his people. And again, the people of Yasin, they rejected the call from the prophet there, and so you can see that how the people of Taif, how they're just really freaked out with all of this, and they don't know what to do, and this spiral of hatred and then fear. Well, everyone else has become a Muslim. The Prophet will probably want to seek his revenge about Urwah, and they sort of get into a spiral of denial and obfuscation. And then some of the relatives say, look, we've got to sort this out. Everyone else is becoming, we're the only tribe left on paganism, and either we've got to do something or we'll be fought against, and we won't be able to defend against all the Arabs. Whereas before, it was just the Prophet ﷺ, fresh from the conquest of Makkah, coming to Taif. So then they decided to send a delegation, because they can see other delegations going. So they wanted to negotiate a truce or some arrangement with the Prophet ﷺ. So then they found someone called Yalal ibn Amr to be the one to lead the delegation. He goes, no. I'm not going, because I don't want the same thing to happen to me that you did to Urwah. Look how respected Urwah was, and look what he did to him. So if I come back with something that you don't like, what are you going to do to me? And so the elders are panicking, and they get other people, other leaders from other tribes like Banu Malik, and they go as a small senior delegation to the Prophet ﷺ. So again, you can see how nervous they are about this whole situation, because they don't know what's going to happen, and they know they can't hold back the Muslims anymore. So they need a way out. So this senior delegation, and it included somebody called Uthman ibn Abu al-Ash Ath-Thaqafi. Come on to that Uthman later. So basically they reach out to Mughira ibn Shuba, Urwah's nephew, the one from their tribe who'd fled, who struck the hand of Urwah. So they reached out to him, and then he's on the watch, and he knows they're coming. And when he sees them coming, when he sees the delegation coming, he's really happy, and then he's rushing back to meet the Prophet ﷺ in the mosque to say, people of Thaqif are here, and he thinks they're coming here to become Muslim. So he's overjoyed. As he's rushing back, Abu Bakr sees him, and Abu Bakr says, "Well, what's the rush?" And he goes, "Oh, the people of Thaqif here, they're coming to become Muslims. I want to give the good news to the Prophet ﷺ." So Abu Bakr said, "Look, if it's okay with you, can I ask a favor and I be the one to tell the Prophet ﷺ?" And Mughira said, "Okay, that's fine," because obviously Abu Bakr was far more senior, and the joy they get from telling the Prophet ﷺ a good news, it's immeasurable, and obviously it makes their day, because it makes the Prophet ﷺ happy, it makes them happy. So this is a privilege. So Abu Bakr, he went there, and the Prophet ﷺ, he was really pleased to hear that the tribe of Thaqif is coming to embrace Islam. And so Mughira, he rushes back to the delegation and tells them all the protocols. Well, okay, right, you're coming, you need to be aware of this, be aware of that. You don't call the Prophet by his first name. This is how you for them. This is what this is the etiquette and the protocol, which they duly ignored. And so when they got there, they didn't say the salam properly. They gave the Jahiliyyah salam and called Muhammad by his first name. But there was some, he was chill with that. He didn't take them to task on that. What's more important is to have meaningful dialogue and not get hung up on those aspects. So the Prophet, he put a double tent for them in the corner of the mosque, so they can see. This is during Ramadan, so they can see what's going on. And it said that they stayed in that tent for about 10 days, so a long time. And there's a lot of coming and going between them and the Prophet. The negotiations that are happening, and they had, as a senior delegation, they would choose someone. They wouldn't all go to the Prophet. They would choose someone to mediate, and they chose someone called Khalid ibn Sa'id, and they would send him, who's sort of on their behalf, to do the nitty-gritty negotiations. And again, it said that the tribe was so worried that they might, because they had Jahiliyyah concepts, they were so worried that they might be treated as they would treat others, that the food might be poisoned or they'd be ambushed, etc. So they'd insist that Khalid ate the food first, before they would eat it in case it was poisoned, etc., etc. So again, that's their thinking. So then they came and they said, "Look, can we have a treaty or not?" And the Prophet said, "Yes, of course you can, if you embrace Islam, become Muslim." And they said, "Well, that's not going to happen. So let's talk about other things." So they said, "Okay." Going backwards and forwards, and then they said, "Look, we heard that interest or riba is haram, right?" And the Prophet said, "Yes, Allah has forbidden riba, right?" And the Prophet quoted in the Qur'an that basically the money you get back is what you put in, so the original amount. And then next issue they brought up was zina. So how you say zina's not allowed, but how can we not live without fornication and adultery? We are merchants, we travel a lot, and we have needs, and we need to do zina and adultery and fornication. And Prophet says, "No, Allah's forbidden it. It's not negotiable." Next time they come back and say, "Well, what about khamr? What about alcohol? We are Taif. We've got vineyard. We have grapes. Wine is what we do. Surely you can't ban wine. We just, as a people, can't give that up." And the Prophet says, "No. Allah has forbidden khamr, right?" And they say, "Look, but our culture, it's a cold climate, our culture is to drink. It's what we do." Prophet says, "No, not negotiable." And so they're going back and they're panicking. What will we go back and tell the people? They're not going to live. They're not going to accept the fact that they can't do riba, they can't do zina, they can't drink alcohol. There's no way our people are going to accept that. And then one of the wise one amongst them says, "Well, why won't our people accept it? What's the alternative? Either there's war and we'll get obliterated. There's no way of holding off the Muslims. They will send an army and finishes us all off, right? And then besides, look at all of these people out there in Medina. They've given it up. They can live. Surely it can be done." So just breaking down those things. So the next thing they come up with, trying to object, is about their idol. And again, they were really proud of their idol al-Lat, and they wanted that to be as a rival to Makkah, and we've talked about that before. So they've invested a lot in al-Lat. So what about our idol? The Prophet said it's going to be destroyed, obviously. And they said, no, just give us some time with it, and then we'll get rid of it. So, no, give us 3 years. I said, of course not. Okay, give us 2 years. Of course not. Give us a year. And then 11 months and 10 months and 9 months. And each time they're going back, and then getting down to a single month, and then 2 weeks, a day, or 1 week and a day. And the Prophet says, no, this not for a moment longer. And he says, okay, fine. But we cannot destroy. Don't expect us to destroy our own idol. You need to send someone. The Prophet says, okay, fine. And then later on he sends Mughira ibn Shuba, which we'll talk about, inshallah. And then the next thing they come back with, okay, fine. We have to pray, fine. But we told that, we have to pray 5 times a day. Can you forgive us from praying, because we live in a cold place, it's really cold up there, and we can't bend down so often because of the cold weather. Can you give us that exemption? But says no, there's no, what good is there in any religion without prayer? Of course not. Oh dear. And they said, okay, well, if we have to pray, then can we pray without wudhu? Right, because it's cold, it gets really cold there, in the night times, and we don't want to do wudu. And the Prophet says, no, you have to do wudu as well. So the next thing they come back with, okay, fine, well, can you forgive us from, exempt us from zakah and from jihad? And one of the narrations say that the Prophet said, yeah, okay, fine, you are exempt for these for the moment. And then when the delegation went back, the Prophet said they shall give zakah and do jihad. And so there are 2 interpretations of that. One is that the Prophet, this was just a prediction. The Prophet knew they were going to do jihad, knew they were going to pay zakah, and so he's saying that, and he's just sort of using that as a way of just concluding that the negotiations and that's fine. This is a prediction that they will do that. The other interpretation from some of the scholars is the Amir al-Mu'mineen has the legal leeway to allow new converts certain limited exemption from certain rules. And again, you can draw both of these conclusions from this particular incident. But again, that's not something that we need to sort of get into now, obviously. And again, at the end of the day, it's better for somebody to become a Muslim and do, and then Iman will enter their hearts, than to remain a non-Muslim. So there is wisdom in not throwing the whole book at a new Muslim or a new community straight away. Give them time to learn the beauty of Islam and let it embed and crystallize it, and then they will willingly accept everything. And again, there's that famous discourse between Aisha and the Prophet ﷺ about people not being ready, etc. Anyway, so what was it? They then accept it, they become Muslim, and then for a few days there, after becoming Muslim, they spend a few days during Ramadan and getting to know things. What one of the stories is that as Bilal, he would bring them suhoor at the beginning of the fast. And they say, look, well, we can't eat now because the sun's already up. And what they meant was it's quite light. We can see the brightness on the horizon. And Bilal said, look, I've just come from the Prophet ﷺ. Literally, he's there in the mosque, and he is eating. And say, okay, fine. And then likewise at the end of the day, Bilal comes to them with food, and they said, well, we can't eat because it's still daylight. And then Bilal says, look, I've just come from the Prophet ﷺ, and he has just broken his fast, therefore I'm coming to you, right? And so they were just for them they didn't know the full details, so that they were just being extra cautious about the beginning and the end. But Bilal saying, actually, this is how it should be. And it said, that one of the group, Uthman ibn Abu al-Aas, he was a junior one of that delegation, and his job essentially was just to look after the camels and sort of do menial stuff. And so what would happen, and he was the youngest amongst them. So what would happen is that after the delegations did their business, he would then go to the Prophet and ask him questions and learn the Qur'an or learn about Islam. And if the Prophet was there or if he was asleep, he would go to Abu Bakr and ask him. So he was learning about Islam surreptitiously almost. And then as it was time for the delegation to go back, Abu Bakr said to the Prophet, why don't you make Uthman ibn Abu al-As their sort of leader, because he's the most knowledgeable? The Prophet agreed. And that was quite critical, because when it came to the wars of Ridda, after the Prophet died, there was a movement within Taif to rebel, recant, apostatize, become non-Muslim, and then go back to their old ways, because the Prophet was dead, and they would interpret that their agreement was with the Prophet, and if he's not around anymore, then the agreement is no longer valid. But it was Uthman who stood up and said, "O people of Thaqif, don't let us have the humiliation of being the last people to embrace Islam, become Muslim, and be the first people to leave Islam." Right? Because this is the 9th year of the Hijrah, and the delegations are coming, and this is the Ramadan when they're coming. And he said, "Look, don't let us be the one of the last of the big tribes to become Muslim and the first to leave. What humiliation for us!" And partly because of that, the people of Thaqif, they were steadfast and they didn't apostatize. Final story, there's some of the narrations about when the delegation got back, they didn't immediately tell the people, but then because they knew it would be too much for the people to accept and people would be depressed. But then it said, especially when they're told they can't, do riba, zina, khamr, and then Allah cast terror into their hearts. Because some of them were ready to take up arms again, and then the delegation said, "Well, actually, no, we become Muslim, and this is everything we have to do," and they embraced Islam fully. Then came Mughira ibn Shuba with Khalid bin Walid, the other narrations say with Abu Sufyan, to destroy al-Lat. And again, so they go to the temple where al-Lat is, and the people gather around. It's a big thing. Their idol is going to be destroyed, and so some of the people saying, "Look, don't you dare destroy it. If you destroy it, the calamity will happen. You'll get swallowed up, etc., etc." So Mughira, he says to Abu Sufyan, "Shall play a trick on them?" So fine. So he takes his axe, much to hammer home the point, much like what Ibrahim did with the big idol. To make his point, he takes his axe. He strikes the idol, al-Lat, and then he pretends to be thrown down and sort of die. And then the crowd go wild. "Oh my gosh, didn't we tell you can't do this? al-Lat is the best." Da, 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 da. And then he just gets up, brushes himself and says, "You fools, didn't I just did this to fool you, to show you how silly you guys are. I just wanted to make, to mock you, make fun of your beliefs." And then in front of them, he starts hacking away and destroying their idol. And again, a lot of these people, they actually believe the physical idol was the god. And so he's destroying them. And then the high priest and other people are saying, "Wait till you get to the base of the idol, then Allah will do its magic and sort you out." And then he's carrying on. He gets to the base, gets through the base, nothing happens. And then he breaks open the floor of where the idol is, and he finds a place full of jewels and silk and garments, etc. And they take that back, and obviously that's as booty and goes to the Bayt al-Mal, and Prophet distributes it to the poor. So that's the story of the people of Taif, Banu Thaqif, and obviously we started off with the story of Banu Saad ibn Bakr. So inshallah, do remember us in your prayers. We'll finish there, and until next time, inshallah, bismillahir والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا